What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you an exciting update about the upcoming new entry into the Divinity franchise, just labeled Divinity in this case, but if you've been watching the channel much, I've been covering this quite a bit over the last few days, as I love the Divinity universe, so this is a really good time for me personally. However, one thing that came up in the course of those videos, or two things really, were what kind of genre of game would this be, and where would it take place in the Divinity timeline, stuff like that. And thanks to what appears to be an embargo lift on a bunch of interviews, we have answers to quite a few of those questions and some more stuff, actually, that I would like to go over. So some of this comes from I believe, French outlet, which is the most important one to me personally, but also places like Bloomberg and PC Gamer put out some of this information, and I'll try to link those articles below. So, of course, people have access to them. Now, not to bury the lead here, probably the biggest one for a lot of people is that turn-based has been confirmed for the upcoming Divinity title. Now, this is not, I would say, surprising given their success with turn-based RPGs in recent years. It was only ever really a question because the Divinity universe has used other genres previously, and no one was really sure if they would just continue to go that route in the future, of course. Now, what does make that bit of news a little bit more interesting, though, is that they've also confirmed that they are using a different system than Original Sin 2, the most recent entry in the franchise that also happens to be turn-based. They, as you would probably expect, didn't give a ton of details here, mostly just that they were going to be using the experiences that they've had with, of course, things like Baldur's Gate 3 to tighten that game up and try to make the most compelling experience possible. So I imagine this is the kind of thing we'll have to wait for more substantial details, but for now, just the fact that it's turn-based is probably going to be enough for a lot of people. Now, another one of these articles asked what, to me, was probably the single most important question, actually, which is, where does this game take place in the timeline? And the answer is about 100 years after Divinity Original Sin 2. Now, that's important because the latest game in the timeline chronologically was Divinity 2, Ego Draconis, which takes place 60 years after Original Sin 2. So now that we know roughly exactly where this game is going to take place, it looks like some speculation about this being about the Chaos God, which was a big part of Divinity 2, Ego Draconis, is more than likely, especially combined with everything going on in the trailer that they announced the game with. While we still don't know for sure, to be very clear, it is very likely to me personally anyway that this is probably the route they are going then, and I could not be more excited for that. They have not touched on or advanced that part of the lore in forever, basically, and for me, that's huge. I am honestly so excited to see what they wind up doing with that. Now, speaking of the story, though, another big focus on these articles was, of course, the choice and consequence and the nature of the announcement trailer, which is probably no surprise given its very graphic nature. People have certainly had questions about it, what the tone that sets for the entirety of the game, that kind of thing. And they did want to reassure people that that was, of course, just a trailer, and that whether or not things like that happen are entirely up to you. Now, choice and consequence plays into that. If you want the story to be as dark as it is in that trailer, you could certainly make it happen, but you can also do the opposite. That is to say, make sure none of those things happen and that better things come to pass, which makes sense given everything they've done with their previous work, so, no real reason to doubt them on that specifically, mind you. And then last but not least, unsurprisingly, it looks like they are in fact planning an early access for this. Still too early to talk things like dates or whatnot, but given their past experiences with early access, what we can probably expect is basically the first act of the game that they will use to refine systems and consequences, reactions, things like that, and then the rest of the game won't open up until actual launch day. Problem with that approach, though, to be clear, it has obviously worked out for them. I do want to point out, though, that in both Divinity Original Sin 2 and Baldur's Gate 3, this posed a problem with the last act of the game being of significantly lesser quality than the original first act, which got a bunch of feedback and playtesting, things like that, via these early access periods. And from the sounds of it, it looks like we're going for strike 3 on that one, but again, from their end, it's probably a why fix what ain't broke type of situation. But everything has trade-offs, and this was one of those cases. Another thing I would be remiss not to mention, it was mentioned that they were messing around with AI as part of just kind of seeing what it could do, things like that. I want to make it clear that I am not a fan of that, especially in a franchise that I love this much. However, it does kind of look like the articles maybe got away from themselves here. In fact, Swin, the studio head, had to put out a message that they are not pushing hard or replacing anyone with AI, and that all that was happening here is that they would explore concept art with generative AI, but mostly just in terms of reference images, things like that. They use it more of as a search engine. Nothing from that is making it into the game in any way, which is certainly a welcome bit of relief. Was happy to see that they were pretty quick on the correction there, or the explainer, if you will. I think that will hopefully put a lot of people's mind at ease, my own included. This is not a game I would want to see tainted with a problem like AI art, so there is certainly that. But all in all, this was an exciting round of updates for this game. I wanted to be sure to cover these pretty quickly. Truth be told, I would have been up for basically anything in terms of whether or not it was turn-based, third-person, that kind of thing. I'm comfortable with all that stuff. More so, it was about the universe for me here, and knowing that it is set after Divinity 2 Ego Draconis, which makes it clear they are almost certainly finally tackling the Chaos storyline that they haven't touched in, basically since Divinity 2 Ego Draconis, is incredibly exciting to me personally, and probably unsurprisingly, you can expect me to cover that in depth as soon as we get any sort of information. I love the lore of the Divinity universe. Used to be an entirely dedicated lore channel, but for the moment, that is pretty much going to do it. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz. Stick around for a while as I'll be covering this game to death more than likely, but for right now, that's going to do it. So regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.